And we're preparing now for a highly anticipated press conference by India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, where it is expected that the Modi government's fresh bid for a massive bank cleanup and some wide-ranging reforms in different sectors is expected to be unveiled and detailed. The Modi government is going into a banking reforms overdrive, and we are told that the Finance Minister is set to announce steps to rid banks of bad loans, as well as several other announcements that will have a key impact in other sectors, all in an effort to revive and rejuvenate the economy following the COVID disaster. Big bank reforms likely to be the flagship announcement when Nirmala Sitharaman's press conference begins in just a few minutes from now. Let's detail for you what we already know, and these are all indicators that we've already gotten from industry and from the government. The government's big relief to the banking sector is likely to be, like I said, the flagship announcement when Nirmala Sitharaman starts speaking in a moment from now. She's likely to announce bad bank NARCL today. NARCL to absorb stressed loans of government-owned banks. Reports of 89,000 crores in 22 bad loans likely to be transferred initially. Reports also suggesting that a total transfer could be of 2 lakh crore rupees. The move will help banks free up their books, and the government could initially earmark up to 31,000 crore rupees for guarantees. So big banking reforms likely to be in the offing when Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, speaks in just a moment from now. Now, the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited, or NARCL, is likely to be front and center in these reforms and announcements that are likely to be made in a minute from now. Let's just explain to our viewers what a bad bank is. Now, a bad bank involves it's a special bank setup and guaranteed by the government. Now, houses stressed or bad loans of banks. It houses stressed or bad loans of banks. So a bad bank is a bank which houses or accommodates the stressed or bad loans of other banks. It tries to resolve or liquidate those bad loans and is paid a service fee by other banks to take loans off their books. It also helps other banks to focus on their core competencies and their core jobs. So these reforms are likely to involve reforms towards bad banks. So that's the key indicator as we wait for the Finance Minister to begin her press conference. Some reforms have already been announced in a big way in the telecom and the automotive sectors, and now the banking sector likely to be the next big target for reforms by the Modi government. This will be the first major press conference on reforms by the Finance Ministry and the Modi government in the run-up to what has been a long period of economic devastation during the COVID pandemic. And we're here to explain to you what these reforms will mean. So we're going to cut to the Finance Minister's press conference in a moment, and then we will decode for you what these reforms likely mean. Abha Bakaya finally with me. Thanks, Abha, for being with me. These big banking reforms, we've decoded some of them. Lots of expectations that today's press conference by the Finance Minister will be with regard to banking reforms. What more can you tell us about that?
This is going to be significant, Shiv, and clearly indicators are that this is going to primarily be what she will be discussing today. Remember, we've had a whole host of NPAs that some of these banks and key banks have been struggling with now over a period of time. Now, a bad bank is a bank that will be set up that will actually, where all the bad loans will be transferred into that particular bank. It's called a bad bank, and it will be an asset reconstruction program. Other illiquid holdings of other financial institutions, everything will go into that particular entity. Now, it's understood that they're actually going to finalize that proposal today to formalize backing for the securities receipts issued by the National Asset Reconstruction Company. So the National Asset Reconstruction Company will then take over those NPAs. These will later, of course, be further, expedited in terms of sales, whether to, certain types of funds,
Abha,
etc.
stay with me. Nirmala Sitharaman has just begun to speak. Let's cut across and listen into her.
Today the briefing pertains to a cabinet decision of yesterday, where the cabinet has approved for the issue of Government of India guarantee up to 30,600 crores for the security receipts which will be issued by the NARCL, which is the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited. You are aware that in the budget of 21-22, I had announced the intention of setting up an asset reconstruction company with also an asset management company so that we can consolidate and take over the existing stressed assets, the debts, and thereafter manage and dispose of them to buyers so that we can realize the value of these stressed assets. If I can just go to slightly detail of the background. You remember that in 2015, asset quality review had happened of the banks. That was essentially for cleaning up and fully provisioning bank balance sheets, which revealed very high incidence of non-performing assets. Everybody is aware of the story. The government came up with a strategy of 4 Rs. Recognizing the NPA, which is the recognition of the problem, and then resolution, recapitalization, and then finally reforms. That year, after the recognition, the quantification of NPAs had started in a very planned manner, and the recovery from the NPAs have also begun from there. And that's a routine process. But after the asset quality review, whatever had been recognized, the recoveries had to happen. So in the last 6 financial years, as a background, I want to put this because the 4 Rs were really executed with such meticulousness that the recognition happened, resolution took place, and in some cases it took place, many other cases it did not. And then we kept recapitalizing the banks, as is the 3rd R. And the 4th R was reforms. So in the last 6 financial years, banks have recovered 5,01,479 crores in the last 6 years. I'm just reading the numbers, 5,01479 crores. Of this, you want me to repeat that number again? 5,01479 crores. Of this, 3.1 lakh crores have been recovered since March 2018. Since March 2018, 3.1 lakh crores have been recovered. The total I read out was 5 lakh odd. In 18-19 alone, a record of 1.2 lakh crores were recovered. Recoveries included even those which were recovered from so-called written off. You have this written off, which every now and then becomes a debatable point for people who don't understand writing off in the banking parlance. So 5,01,479 in total recovery crores in the last 6 financial years. 3.1 lakh crore were recovered since March 2018. 1.2 lakh alone, 1.2 lakh crores alone was recovered in a single year, which is 2018-19. And I also want to highlight, this includes 99,996 crores, which were recovered only from written off assets, such as Bhushan Steel, SR Steel, and so on. So, the Asset Quality Review 2015, we then go on to talking about the 4 Rs, and then also looking at recovering from NPAs. All this has been happening. So keeping in line with the 4 Rs, recognition, resolution, even as they are happening, recapitalization. I just want to draw your attention that in 2017-18, government infused 90,000 crores. And in 18-19, 1.06 lakh crores. So 17-18, 90,000 crores. 18-19, 1.06 lakh crores. 19-20, 70,000 crores. 2021, 20,000 crores. And in the budget speech of 21-22, which is the latest, we had said that the government will infuse 20,000 crores to the banking sector in this financial year, 21-22. So of the 4 Rs, recognition, resolution, even as they were happening, recapitalization has also happened. Reforms, I will not get into the details, but I'll just flag off. Bank mergers, managerial reforms, bringing cooperative banks under the RBI, several supervisory action framework for primary cooperative banks, and so on. Since 2014, creating the Bank Board Bureau, strengthening asset reconstruction companies which existed, creating also a framework for key performance indicators for the banks, and strengthening of risk management practices. So reforms, I can go further to say willful defaulters were not sanctioned at additional benefits for the bank's sake. Willful defaulters have also been debarred from accessing capital markets to raise funds. These are all reforms which were carried out in order that the banking sector improves. The jurisdiction of the Debt Recovery Tribunal was increased from 10 lakh to 20 lakhs so that the DRTs can focus on high-value cases. 6 new DRTs have been established so that recovery can be fast. So, if under the reforms, the capitalization, bank mergers, managerial reforms, fraud detection, in that I'll just highlight the large frauds. Frauds are detected as a continuous process, but the large frauds say of 100 crores or more, have an average lag time of about 57 months. That's the average, I mean. So, big frauds which have happened 57 months earlier were all getting detected. As a result, some people would say, how is it that there are more NPAs now? NPAs are not born overnight. Particularly NPAs resulting out of 100 crores or more do have their lag time. And finally, I did say for the fourth R, reforms as bank mergers, managerial reforms, fraud detection, fraud prevention steps were also taken quite a lot with the RBI on course. The Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018 is showing a lot of result in getting people from outside. And the last highlight before I get to the subject of the cabinet clearance is because we kept very closely looking at the managerial and also professionalism in the banks. Banks in 2018, just 2 of the 21 public sector banks were profitable. In 2018, just 2 out of 21 public sector banks were profitable. I'm happy to say 2021, meaning 2020, 2021, only 2 reported loss for the full year, that is. Incidentally, banks have also been raising monies in the public, equity and debt. Because as we go with the 4 Rs, banks are today able to come out of the prompt corrective action. They're also making profit. They're also going over to raising money from the markets. I'll just give you a couple of examples so that I can tell you why I had to tell you this story from 2015. Union Bank of India raised 1,447 crores through QIP in July 2021. Canara Bank has raised 2,500 crores in August 2021. Bank of India has announced a QIP for about 3,000 crores. State Bank of India said that its board has approved raising capital by way of issuance of Basel III compliant debt of about 14,000 crores. So a total of 58,697 crores are raised by the public sector banks, both as debt and equity, and of which 10,543 crores are equity alone. So banks are not waiting for the government to infuse equity. They are going to the market and on their own standing raising equity and also debt. So today, in the first 5 months of this year alone, 7,800 crores have been raised as against 10,500 and odd in the last year. So if I started with 2015, asset quality review, recognition, resolution, recapitalization and reform, today we see that the banks have come out. The only thing which, as was promised in the Union Budget of 21-22, is to set up the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited so that those assets which are sitting in the balance sheet of banks, which are NPAs, for which provisioning has been done, full provisioning has been done over the last few years, there will now be an asset reconstruction company which will aggregate all this, collect it and take it over, make sure that the managing and disposing of it is done professionally, and which will therefore result in banks' balance sheets and books being cleaner, transparent. They will now be able to stand on their own and do their business. We have proved it because banks are going out and raising resources. So the setting up of the National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited has this as the background. With this, I think between 2014 and 19 and 19 to today, the entire cycle of cleaning up the public sector banks, removing from them those assets which are NPAs, putting them into an organizational structure which is registered as a company, aggregation can be made and they can get into that organization, and then an asset management company would deal with reorganization, reevaluation, and making sure that they are finally sold off. And for the professional management of this, even as we are setting up the National Assets Reconstruction Company Limited, we are also setting up an India Debt Resolution Company Limited. In the National Asset Reconstruction Company, banks, the public sector banks themselves will have a 51% ownership. And in the India Debt Resolution Company, public sector banks and public financial institutions will hold a maximum of 49% stake, and then the private sector lenders will also be participating in it. So what this does is actually give us a complete picture of the Indian banking sector reform, cleaning up of the books, taking away the NPAs, and getting the banks their dues in the due course. And why do I say in the due course? Even as these are being culled out of the bank's books and put into the National Asset Reconstruction Company, a 15% cash payment will be made to the banks for the assets based on some valuation, and the rest will be 85% be given as security receipts. For the security receipts to hold on and to have their value intact, there is a need for government to give the backstop arrangement. And that is why this 30,600 crores has been cleared by the cabinet yesterday. There are several private sector asset reconstruction companies, about 28 of them in the private sector, all of which are doing some kind of resolution, but they do not take up big ticket asset resolutions. They hesitate to come in for that kind of a number. Therefore, there's a need for government-backed security receipts to be given, and once the asset is finally managed, valuated better, and then when it is sold through asset management companies, the rest 85% will be given to the banks, which are held as security receipts for some time. The security receipts are getting the backstop through the government's funding, only in as much as to be able to pay the gap between the realized value and the face value of the security receipts. And this will hold good only for 5 years. And in order that there are no delays in the process, the rate of, the payment, they will have to pay a fees. Even that will go on increasing. So there is an incentivizing for speedy disposal of these assets, more as an ongoing concern than as a liquidation. Of course, there will be coordination with IBC and all other debt recovery processes as well. I've given you a broad picture. I've also given you a background. This, I'm happy to say, is a short and a medium term way in which the banking sector in India has been, in totality, we have addressed the issues facing the banking sector, which was in 2015, staring at our economy, saying, how are these banks going to recover? Because the double balance sheet problem, the twin balance sheet problem, which caused a lot of stress, today I feel has a way in which this stress can be resolved. And I'm glad that the cabinet has looked at it in a holistic fashion and given this 30,600 crores for a period of 5 years only. And within that 5 years, all this will have to be resolved. This is my opening statement. Of course, Secretary Banking is here. He'll also join me in addressing any of your queries. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll take some questions now. 22.
And we'll have more updates on that press conference, what it means for you, what it means for the country in just a short while. Don't forget to watch the Business Today TV show that comes up at 10:30 p.m. today, where we'll have an extensive breakdown of what these banking reforms really mean. Very quick break here, much more on the other side. Stay with me.